The ballroom glittered with golden light, crystal chandeliers casting a glow on polished marble floors. Expensive laughter filled the air, the kind that only came from people who never worried about tomorrow. Waiters in black uniforms moved silently through the crowd, balancing trays of champagne and wine, weaving between dresses worth fortunes and suits cut with precision. At the center of it all stood David Harrow, the young millionaire who everyone wanted to see. Tall, confident, and smiling in that practiced way, he held a glass in his hand while his fiancée, Elena, rested lightly on his arm. Her gown shimmered like silver water under the lights, and her beauty drew eyes from every corner. People whispered. Some spoke of David's fast rise in business, others admired Elena's elegance, and many envied the perfect picture they made together. It was a night meant to celebrate wealth, power, and love. Nothing seemed out of place until it happened. As David raised his glass, a voice cut through the noise. "Don't drink that." The words were sharp, urgent, and loud enough that nearby guests turned their heads. A young woman had stepped forward from the edge of the room. She wore the plain black uniform of the catering staff, her hair tied back in a neat bun, her hands trembling as she pointed at David's glass. The room froze for a second. Then whispers spread like fire. Elena's smile stiffened. David blinked, lowering the glass slightly. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm but puzzled. The girl's face was pale, but her eyes burned with determination. "Please, don't drink that. It's not safe." Gasps rolled through the crowd. A few guests chuckled nervously. Others frowned at the audacity. Who was this girl to interrupt the richest man in the room? Elena's grip on David's arm tightened. She turned, her voice dripping with anger. "This is ridiculous. She's just a servant trying to make herself noticed." But the girl didn't back away. "Sir, I'm telling the truth. That drink isn't what it looks like." Laughter broke out near the bar. One man whispered loudly enough to be heard, "Maybe she wants his attention for herself." Another added, "This is better than the orchestra." David's brows knit together. He wasn't a man easily rattled, but something in the girl's voice unsettled him. She wasn't smiling, she wasn't playing. She looked terrified yet brave enough to speak up in front of dozens of powerful strangers. "What do you mean it's not safe?" David asked slowly. The girl opened her mouth, but Elena snapped first. "This is insulting. Throw her out." "How dare she?" Two security guards began to move toward the girl, but David lifted his hand. "Wait." His tone carried authority, and the room hushed again. Now every eye was on the girl. She swallowed hard. "Sir, please trust me. That drink has been touched. It's not good for you." The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the faint clinking of glasses from across the room. Elena laughed suddenly, a sharp sound that didn't match her usual grace. "Touched? This is madness. She's probably drunk from the kitchen stock." But David didn't laugh. He studied the girl carefully. Her uniform was clean, but her shoes were worn, her hands calloused. She didn't look like a liar. She looked desperate. "Your name?" he asked. "Anna," she whispered. "Anna Reed. And how do you know this?" Her lips parted, but she hesitated, glancing around the room. Dozens of eyes pierced her, some amused, some hostile. Fear flickered across her face, but she stood straighter. "I just know," she said firmly. Elena scoffed. "You see? She has no proof. This is humiliating, David. She's ruining our night." Guests nodded, some muttering in agreement. One older woman whispered, "Such a shame, spoiling the engagement party." David glanced at his glass, the golden liquid catching the light. He was a man who trusted reason, numbers, deals, not sudden warnings from strangers. Yet something inside him hesitated. He placed the glass carefully on the nearest table. "Very well," he said. "I won't drink it." A ripple of surprise passed through the room. Some guests frowned, others smiled nervously, and Elena's expression cracked for the briefest second before she masked it with charm. "How noble of you to entertain nonsense," she said softly, though her eyes flashed with irritation. The orchestra, sensing tension, played a softer tune in the background. Waiters moved more quickly, eager to smooth the awkward air. But the damage was done. The perfect evening had a crack in it now, one everyone could see. Anna was led away by the guards, but not roughly. David had made sure of that. As she passed, she looked back once, her gaze steady, her lips forming silent words, "Be careful." David felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. For the rest of the night, the laughter sounded thinner, the music less bright. Every time he caught Elena's smile, he thought of the flash of irritation in her eyes when he had put the glass down. Every time a guest congratulated him, he heard again the desperate voice, "Don't drink that." He told himself it was foolish to let a stranger's words affect him. Yet, deep inside, a shadow had formed. When the last toast ended and the last guest left, the ballroom stood silent. Only David and Elena remained by the grand staircase. She leaned close, her perfume sweet, her voice gentle. "You didn't believe her, did you?" she asked. David forced a smile. "Of course not." But his hand, resting at his side, was clenched tight. And far away, in the quiet of the night, Anna walked home through dark streets, whispering to herself, "He doesn't know who she really is." Not yet. The warning had been given. Whether David listened or not would decide everything. The night after the party, David sat alone in his study. The city lights shone through the wide glass windows, tall towers glowing like stars against the black sky. A glass of untouched whiskey sat beside him, but he wasn't drinking. His mind kept going back to the words that had cut through the ballroom like a knife. "Don't drink that." Anna's face replayed in his memory again and again. Her eyes hadn't been the eyes of a liar or a dreamer. They had been the eyes of someone who carried truth too heavy for her to bear. He remembered her trembling hands, her pale face, and the desperate courage it must have taken to speak in front of so many strangers. He tried to push the thought away. Elena was perfect. She was kind, beautiful, elegant. She had stood beside him through business storms and personal battles. He couldn't allow one poor servant's interruption to plant poison in his mind. And yet, the poison was already there, not in his drink, but in his thoughts. A soft knock came at the door. Elena stepped in, her silver dress replaced by a simple silk robe. Her hair fell like dark waves over her shoulders, and her smile was warm, almost tender. "You're still awake," she said, gliding to his side. "You've been sitting here for hours." David forced a smile. "Just thinking." "About tonight?" She tilted her head, her voice soft. "Don't let that girl disturb you." She was clearly looking for attention. "You handled it perfectly." Her hand brushed his shoulder gently, but David shifted slightly, almost unconsciously. Still, it was strange. She seemed certain. Elena laughed, a sound like glass chimes. "Certain?" "David, she works in catering. People like her are always desperate to be noticed by people like us. Maybe she wanted money, maybe she thought she could frighten you into rewarding her. Don't give it a second thought." David nodded slowly, but the knot in his chest didn't loosen. That night, when Elena finally went to bed, David sat awake. He stared at the whiskey on his desk but never lifted it to his lips. He didn't trust the drink anymore, not tonight. The next day, rumors from the party spread across the city's social circles. Newspapers didn't dare print it, but whispers filled expensive cafes and golf clubs. The girl who stopped the millionaire from drinking. The fiancé's reaction. The awkward silence. David tried to bury himself in meetings, but everywhere he went, he caught pieces of conversation when people thought he wasn't listening. Strange, wasn't it? "I heard the girl vanished after the party." His fiancée didn't look pleased, I'll tell you that much. By evening, he couldn't take it anymore. He called his driver and gave an address he hadn't planned on saying aloud, the catering company's headquarters. The building was small, tucked between warehouses. Inside, staff were cleaning equipment, folding linens, and stacking trays. When David walked in, people straightened immediately. Their eyes widened. What was a millionaire doing here? I'm looking for Anna Reed, David said. The manager, an older man with tired eyes, frowned. She hasn't been in since last night. Caused a scene, embarrassed us in front of our best client. I told her not to come back until I call her. If I ever do. Do you know where she lives? The man hesitated, then sighed. I suppose, but, sir, don't waste your time. She's a sweet girl but troubled. Keeps to herself. Talks about things that don't make sense. David ignored the warning. Give me the address. That evening, David stood outside a narrow apartment block in the poorer side of the city. The hall smelled of damp walls and cheap paint. He climbed the creaking stairs and knocked on a door with peeling blue paint. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the door opened a crack, and Anna's face appeared. Her eyes widened. You? Yes, David said quietly. I need to talk. She hesitated, glancing up and down the hall as if expecting someone to follow him. Then she pulled the door open wider. The apartment inside was small, with second-hand furniture and books stacked on the floor. David stepped in, feeling out of place in his tailored suit. He had never stood in a room so plain, so real. Why did you say what you said last night? He asked. Anna looked at him carefully, her voice steady but low. Because it was true. True? I saw her, Anna whispered. Your fiancée. She was near the drinks before they were brought out. She thought no one noticed, but I was watching. I saw her hand. I saw her drop something in your glass. David froze. She's not who you think she is, Anna continued, her voice trembling but firm. I know it sounds insane. I know no one will believe me. But I couldn't let you drink that. David's chest tightened. Elena's laugh echoed in his memory, the way she had dismissed Anna so quickly, the flash of irritation when he set the glass down. You expect me to believe, David said slowly, that Elena, the woman I'm going to marry, tried to poison me in front of hundreds of people? Anna's eyes didn't waver. Yes. Silence filled the room, broken only by the hum of the old refrigerator. David turned toward the window. His thoughts were a storm. If Anna was lying, then she was insane, and he was a fool for being here. But if she was telling the truth, then he was engaged to a monster. Anna reached under her small table and pulled out a folder. She handed it to him. I've seen her before. Years ago. In another city. She had a different name then. And the man she was with, he died suddenly. Wealthy. Alone. No one questioned it, but I remember her face. David opened the folder. Inside were yellowed newspaper clippings, printed photos, and scribbled notes. One headline jumped at him: Business tycoon dies in home, heart attack suspected. A picture of the man smiled in black and white. But in the corner of the photograph, blurred but visible, was a woman's face. David's blood ran cold. It was Elena. Younger, with a different hairstyle, but unmistakably Elena. He looked up slowly. Anna's voice was soft but steady. I don't know what she wants from you. But it's not love. Please, be careful. David closed the folder, his hands shaking slightly. He didn't know what to believe. As he left the apartment, Anna called after him. You're not safe with her. Remember that. The night swallowed him as he stepped into the street, the city lights flickering in the puddles on the ground. He told himself he needed proof. He told himself he wouldn't act on fear alone. But deep inside, for the first time, he doubted the woman waiting for him at home. The warning had grown louder. And this time, it came with shadows of the past. David sat in his car outside his mansion, the folder Anna had given him resting on the seat beside him. The night was silent, but his mind was loud, louder than it had ever been. Every page, every old photograph, every yellow clipping screamed one thing: that Elena was not the woman he thought she was. But he couldn't accept it. Not yet. He pressed his hands against the steering wheel, breathing slowly. He needed to be sure. He needed more than old clippings and a servant's desperate words. He needed the truth, and the truth would have to come from Elena herself. The front doors of the mansion opened as his car pulled into the driveway. Elena was waiting. She looked like she had been standing there for hours, her gown replaced with a soft white dress that made her look pure, innocent, untouched by the shadows Anna had described. "David," she said, her voice filled with relief as she walked toward him. "You've been gone so long. I was worried." Her arms wrapped around him as he stepped out of the car. He held her lightly, but his heart did not race like it once had. Instead, a quiet suspicion whispered through him. "I just needed some air," he replied. She smiled, though her eyes searched his face as if trying to read his thoughts. "You're working too hard. You shouldn't let one silly interruption at the party disturb you. People are talking, but I've told everyone it was nothing." David studied her, the way she kept control, the way her voice stayed calm. If she was lying, she was an expert. If she was guilty, she was fearless. Inside the mansion, Elena poured him wine and sat across from him in the grand living room. She crossed her legs elegantly, her eyes glowing in the firelight. "You don't trust me," she said softly, almost like a statement. David blinked. "What makes you say that?" "Because you didn't drink last night. And you're looking at me like I'm a stranger." She leaned forward, her tone tender but sharp. "David, don't let that girl's madness creep into your mind. We're about to build a life together. Don't destroy it over shadows." Her words were smooth, almost perfect. But David's doubt was stronger than her charm. He nodded, said nothing, and excused himself early. That night, when she slept peacefully beside him, he lay awake staring at the ceiling. Anna's folder burned in his thoughts. She's not who you think she is. The next day, David visited an old friend, Detective Harris, a retired investigator who had helped him once during a business scandal. Harris lived quietly now, in a house lined with dusty books and cigarette smoke. David placed the folder on the table. "I need you to look into this. Quietly." Harris adjusted his glasses, flipping through the papers. His brows rose when he saw the old photograph of Elena. "Interesting. Very interesting. Could it be real?" David asked. The detective leaned back. "Names can change. Hair can change. But faces? Faces don't lie. I'll dig deeper. Give me a few days." David nodded, his chest heavy. "I need the truth." While Harris worked, David tried to continue life as normal. Elena planned their wedding with precision, inviting powerful guests, designing an event that would outshine all others. She laughed, she smiled, she touched his arm lovingly. To anyone else, she looked like the perfect bride-to-be. But to David, every glance carried a question. Every smile looked rehearsed. And then, 3 nights later, Harris called. "Come to my house. Now." The detective's study was filled with open files and old photographs when David arrived. Harris pushed a set of papers across the table. "You asked for truth. Here it is. Your fiancée isn't Elena. Not originally. 10 years ago, she was known as Marissa Vane. She was married to Richard Cole, a real estate mogul worth hundreds of millions. He died suddenly. Heart failure, they said. No investigation. She inherited almost everything." David's stomach tightened. "That's not all," Harris continued. 5 years later, under the name Clara Hayes, she was with another wealthy man, Victor Sloan. Same story. He died. She disappeared with part of his estate. The pattern repeats. David stared at the photographs Harris placed before him. In each one, Elena or Marissa, or Clara, stood beside a different man. Her face changed with age and style, but the eyes were always the same. "Are you saying she killed them?" David whispered. Harris leaned forward. "I'm saying men who get close to her don't last. And now she's with you. You don't need me to draw the lines, David." The millionaire's hands shook as he gathered the papers. He wanted to deny it, to call it impossible. But the evidence was undeniable. Elena's past was a shadow that swallowed light. That night, David returned home. Elena greeted him with her usual grace, but he saw her differently now. The softness of her smile looked sharp, the warmth of her voice felt cold. He studied her the way a man studies a painting he knows is forged. At dinner, she raised her glass of wine. "To us," she said. David lifted his own, but the glass trembled slightly in his hand. He did not drink. She noticed. Her eyes flickered for the briefest moment, a spark of something he couldn't name. Then she smiled again, as though nothing was wrong. Later, when she went to bed, David stayed in the study, staring at the fire. He had proof now, enough to ruin her, enough to end everything. But part of him still struggled. Could it really be true? Could the woman he loved, the woman who had shared his life, be a killer? The folder sat on the table, open to the photograph of Elena, no, Marissa, no, Clara, standing beside a man now long dead. And in his ears, he heard Anna's voice again, "She's not who you think she is." Meanwhile, in her small apartment across the city, Anna sat by her window, staring at the same night sky. She whispered to herself, "He must see it now. He has to." She knew Elena's past better than anyone. She had seen the faces, followed the stories, collected the pieces no one else dared to gather. And she knew one thing for certain: David was in danger. The secret was no longer hidden. It was crawling into the light. But secrets never come out without a cost. David no longer looked at his fiancée with the same eyes. Every smile, every touch, every soft word carried weight now, like a blade hidden under silk. He wanted to believe Elena loved him. He wanted to believe Anna was wrong, that Detective Harris had made a mistake, that the past belonged to someone else. But the evidence was there. Elena had changed names, changed cities, and every man she touched had fallen into the grave. If he was next, he would not go down blindly. He needed proof. Not old photographs, not faded articles, proof he could see with his own eyes. So, he planned a test. It began quietly. David told Elena he was meeting with a group of investors to discuss a deal, one that could change his empire forever. He spoke of it over dinner, his voice casual, like it was just another business matter. Elena's eyes sparkled. "A new deal?" she asked softly. "Yes," David replied, swirling the untouched wine in his glass. "A contract worth more than anything I've ever signed. Billions, perhaps." Her lips curved into a smile. "That sounds incredible. I'll host them here, tomorrow night," David added. "It will be private, only a handful of men. Important men." "Of course," she said smoothly. "I'll make sure everything is perfect." Her voice was calm, but David saw something flicker in her gaze. Excitement? Greed? Or something darker? He could not tell, but he filed it away in his mind. The following night, the mansion glowed with candlelight. A long table stretched across the dining room, set with polished silver and crystal glasses. Elena had outdone herself: flowers, fine wine, plates lined with gold. But the investors did not exist. Instead, David had arranged for 2 trusted employees to play the role. They knew nothing of the danger, only that their boss wanted to test his fiancée's loyalty. As the men sat and laughed, Elena moved with grace, pouring wine, touching David's arm with affection, smiling at his guests. She looked like the perfect hostess. But David's eyes were sharp. He watched every movement, every detail. He noticed the way Elena lingered near his glass longer than necessary. The way her hand dipped slightly below the table before she poured. The way her smile seemed just a little too controlled. At one point, she leaned close to David, whispering, "This wine is rare. I saved it just for you." Her perfume was sweet, her tone gentle, but David's chest tightened. He lifted the glass slowly, staring at the golden red liquid. His reflection looked back at him from the surface. "Drink," Elena urged softly, her smile perfect, her eyes watching too carefully. David tilted the glass, letting the wine touch his lips but not pass them. He set it down gently. Later, he said with a smile. Her eyes flashed for a split second, a crack in her mask. Then she laughed lightly and turned to the guests. The night stretched on with fake talks of business, laughter that felt hollow, and tension hidden beneath the clink of silverware. When the men finally left, Elena closed the door behind them and returned to David, her steps slow, her expression unreadable. "You didn't drink," she said, her voice calm but sharp as a blade. David leaned back in his chair, his face neutral. "I wasn't thirsty." Her smile was tight. "You've been avoiding every glass I've poured for you since that night. Do you not trust me, David?" The question hung in the air. For a moment, silence filled the grand room. Then David stood, walking slowly toward her, his eyes locked on hers. "Should I?" he asked quietly. Elena blinked, then laughed softly, shaking her head. "You're letting that foolish girl get into your mind. And now you're creating games. That's not healthy for us." She placed her hand on his chest, but he felt no warmth from her touch. Only pressure. "Do you love me?" he asked suddenly. Her smile widened, too quick, too perfect. "Of course." But the doubt had grown too strong to be buried. That night, David waited until Elena fell asleep beside him. He rose silently, carrying the glass she had poured earlier. In the dim light of his study, he called Harris. The detective arrived within an hour, his trench coat damp from rain. David handed him the glass. "Test it," David whispered. Harris nodded. "I'll have the results by morning." When Harris left, David sat alone in the dark, staring at the shadows on the wall. He could hear Elena breathing softly upstairs, as innocent as a sleeping child. But he knew better now. Innocence was a mask she wore well. The morning came with gray skies. Harris returned, his face grave, a small envelope in his hand. "It's there," he said quietly. "Not a lot, but enough. A slow poison, the kind that builds up in the body. Hard to detect unless you're looking for it." David's heart pounded. The test had worked. The truth was no longer hidden. Elena was trying to kill him. "Be careful," Harris warned. "She's dangerous. If she suspects you know, she won't wait. She'll strike harder." David nodded, his jaw tight. "I won't confront her yet. I'll wait for the right moment." But as he spoke, he knew the war had already begun. That evening, Elena greeted him with the same warmth as always. She touched his arm, kissed his cheek, poured his wine. But now, every gesture looked sharp, every smile looked false. David matched her mask with his own. He smiled, he laughed, he held her hand. But inside, he was already planning. He would not let her take him. He would not become another name on her list. And though Elena did not know it yet, her time was running out. Far across the city, Anna waited by her window, praying David had seen the truth. She didn't know about the test, didn't know about the poison in the glass, but she knew the pattern. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Please, let him believe me." Because if he didn't, she feared she would be attending his funeral next. The mansion was too quiet that night. The silence pressed against the walls like a secret waiting to break free. David sat in the study, the fire throwing long shadows across the floor. On the table before him lay the envelope Detective Harris had given him. Inside it was proof, scientific, undeniable proof, that the woman sleeping in his bed had tried to kill him. But proof was only half the battle. The harder part was the heart. He stared at the door, wondering how he had missed it all. The laughter, the touches, the whispers of love, how much of it had been real, and how much of it had been a performance. As the clock struck midnight, Elena appeared at the doorway. She wore a silk nightgown, her hair flowing like a dark river over her shoulders. In the firelight, she looked like a dream, perfect and untouchable. "You're awake again," she said softly. "David, what troubles you so much that you never sleep anymore?" Her voice was gentle, but to David it sounded like the hiss of a snake. "I was thinking," he said, his tone calm. "About us." She smiled, stepping closer. "And what about us?" "That we don't really know each other," he said. Her smile froze for the briefest moment before she recovered. Of course we do. We're engaged. We've shared everything. David stood slowly, his eyes locked on hers. Have we? Do I know Elena Harrow? Or should I call you Marissa Vane? Or Clara Hayes? The name struck her like a blade. For the first time since he had met her, Elena's face faltered. Her mask cracked. I don't know what you mean, she said quickly, her voice sharp but shaking. David reached to the table and threw the folder onto the floor. Photographs and clippings scattered across the rug, faces of dead men, names of cities, and in the corner of every story, her face. Elena stared at them. For a moment, silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. Then she laughed, a low, hollow sound. So, you've been digging. David's jaw tightened. I had to. You left me no choice. Her laugh faded. She knelt and picked up one photograph, staring at her younger self standing beside Richard Cole. Her fingers trembled, but her eyes grew cold. They were weak, she whispered. All of them. Men with money but no fire. They deserved nothing more than the end they got. David's chest clenched. And me? Am I weak too? Elena's eyes lifted to his. They were no longer soft, no longer loving. They burned with something darker. You, she said slowly, were supposed to be different. Strong. Smart. The only one who could match me. She stood, her presence towering even in silence. But you doubted me. You listened to that little rat of a girl. And now, her lips curled into a bitter smile. Now you know the truth. David's voice was steady, but inside he shook. You tried to poison me. Her silence was answer enough. Why? He demanded. Elena stepped closer, her voice low but sharp as glass. Because power is never shared, David. It is taken. Every man before you thought he owned me. Every man thought he could keep me in a cage of diamonds and call it love. They learned the price of underestimating me. Her eyes gleamed, and her words cut deep. I don't love wealth. I don't love men. I love control. And you, David, you were the biggest prize of all. David's fists clenched. The woman he had once thought an angel now stood before him as a predator, her mask ripped away. You would have killed me, he whispered. She smiled faintly. I still can. The fire crackled in the silence. Before David could answer, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Anna appeared in the doorway, her breath quick, her eyes wide with fear. She had come because Harris had warned her David was planning to confront Elena tonight. She couldn't let him face her alone. Elena's head snapped toward Anna, her eyes narrowing into slits. You. Anna stood her ground, though her hands trembled. I warned him. He knows what you are now. Elena's laugh was cruel. A servant dares to challenge me? I'm not afraid of you, Anna said, her voice shaking but clear. You can't keep hiding behind pretty lies. He sees you now. Everyone will. Elena's eyes darkened. She moved toward Anna like a panther, slow, graceful, deadly. But David stepped in front of her. Enough, he said, his voice ringing with power. This ends tonight. For the first time, Elena hesitated. She looked at him, truly looked, and saw that the man who once adored her now stood as her enemy. You'll regret this, she whispered. Maybe, David said. But at least I'll still be alive to regret it. The confrontation spiraled into chaos. Elena lunged for the glass still sitting on the table, her movements quick, her eyes wild. She lifted it high, her voice breaking. One sip, David, and you'll understand. You'll see what the others saw, the truth that I am stronger than all of you. David grabbed her wrist before the glass touched his lips. The liquid spilled, hissing against the fire as drops fell into the flames. The smell filled the room, sharp and bitter. Elena screamed, pulling away, her mask shattered completely. Guards rushed in at the sound, but froze at the sight of their employer holding his fiancée's wrist, the floor littered with proof of her crimes. David's voice was steady, though his heart thundered. "Take her away." The guards hesitated, looking at Elena, the beautiful woman who had charmed them all. But the fury in her eyes convinced them. They moved forward, and for the first time, Elena struggled. "You'll pay for this, David," she shrieked as they pulled her back. "You think this is over? You think you're safe? You're nothing without me. Nothing." Her voice echoed down the halls until she was gone, leaving only silence and the faint hiss of dying flames. David sank into a chair, his body heavy, his heart racing. Anna knelt beside him, her eyes filled with both relief and sorrow. "You see now," she whispered. David nodded slowly, staring at the spilled wine seeping into the rug. "Yes," he said softly. "I see everything now." The truth was out. The mask was gone. But the war was not finished. The city outside glittered with lights, but inside David's mansion, the night was heavier than stone. Hours had passed since Elena was dragged away screaming, but her words still echoed in David's mind. "You'll pay for this. You're nothing without me." He sat alone in the study, his head in his hands, the fire burning low. The glass she had tried to poison him with still lay shattered on the floor, its sharp edges reflecting the faint glow of dying flames. Every shard was a reminder of how close he had come to death. Anna stood quietly by the window, watching him. She wanted to speak, to comfort him, but she knew he needed time. He had not only lost a fiancée tonight, he had lost trust, innocence, and the belief that love was always pure. Finally, David lifted his head. His eyes were red, not from tears alone but from the weight of the decision crushing him. "Anna," he said quietly. She stepped closer. "Yes? What do I do now?" His voice cracked. "If I go to the police, it will be in every paper. Millionaire almost murdered by fiancée. My company's name will drown in scandal. Investors will pull out. My family's legacy will be dragged through the mud." Anna lowered her eyes. "And if you say nothing?" David's jaw tightened. "She walks free. She finds another victim. She kills again." Silence filled the room. The fire gave one last spark before collapsing into glowing embers. Anna knelt in front of him, her eyes meeting his. "David, when I stopped you that night, I didn't care about your money or your name. I cared about your life. And I care about the truth. What's the use of wealth and legacy if you bury the truth to protect it?" Her words cut deep, sharper than any knife. David stood and paced, his hands clenching into fists. "You don't understand. Men like me, we live in glass houses. One crack, and everything shatters." Anna stood too, her voice rising. "And men like you also have the power to stop monsters like her. Do you know how many people she has fooled? How many lives she has destroyed? If you stay silent, you're letting her win." David turned, his eyes blazing. "And if I speak? Then my name is destroyed, Anna. My life becomes a circus. Do you think I'll ever walk into a boardroom again without whispers behind my back? There goes the fool who almost married a killer." Anna's eyes glistened, but her voice was steady. Better to be called a fool who survived than a coward who stayed silent. David froze. The words hit him harder than Elena's confession ever had. The night stretched on. He poured himself a glass of water, staring at it as if the clear liquid could cleanse him of doubt. But no matter how much he drank, the bitterness in his heart remained. When the first light of dawn slipped through the curtains, Detective Harris returned. His face was grim, his voice heavy. "She's in custody," Harris said. "But she's clever. Without your statement, without your evidence, she'll walk free in weeks. She knows how to twist stories, how to make men believe her. If you stay quiet, David, she'll escape again." David leaned back in his chair, staring at the detective. "And if I speak?" Harris sighed. "Then the world will know the truth. But so will the press. You'll be front-page news for months. Your business will take a hit. You might lose everything, except your life. David closed his eyes. He felt Anna's gaze on him, steady, waiting. For a long moment, the room was silent. Then David opened his eyes and spoke with a strength he hadn't felt in weeks. "Prepare the statement." Anna gasped softly. Harris raised a brow. "Are you sure?" David nodded, his voice firm. "I won't let her hurt anyone else. If my name falls, so be it. Better a ruined name than another grave." The days that followed were chaos. News outlets devoured the story. Headlines screamed: "Millionaire's fiancé arrested in poison plot." "Elena Harrow, the Black Widow of high society?" The world gossiped, investors panicked, friends disappeared. David walked through it all with his head high, though every step felt like walking through fire. Anna stayed by his side, not as a servant but as a quiet strength he leaned on when the weight became too heavy. At the trial, Elena was unrecognizable. The glamorous mask was gone, replaced by cold fury. She tried to twist the truth, painting herself as the victim, accusing David of betrayal, calling Anna a liar. But the evidence was undeniable. The poison. The photographs. The testimonies of others who had once been close to her. The courtroom held its breath when David took the stand. He spoke simply, without theatrics. "She pretended to love me," he said, his voice steady. "But what she loved was power. She tried to take my life, as she has taken others. I won't stay silent. Not for my name, not for my fortune. I choose the truth." His words rippled through the room, cutting through lies like a blade. When the verdict came, guilty on all charges, the courtroom erupted. Elena screamed, her voice echoing like a curse. "You think this is over, David? You'll never escape me." But as the guards dragged her away, David didn't flinch. He felt lighter, not because the burden was gone, but because he had chosen the harder road and survived it. That night, back in the quiet of his home, David stood by the same window where Anna had once whispered the truth to him. The city still glittered, but his heart was calmer now. Anna joined him, her presence gentle but strong. "You lost so much," she said softly. David turned to her, a faint smile touching his lips. "No. I gained something I didn't know I had. Courage. And people who cared enough to tell me the truth." Anna looked away, her cheeks warm. "I only did what was right." "You saved my life," he said firmly. "And you gave me back something Elena almost stole, myself." For a long moment, they stood in silence, watching the sunrise. David knew the road ahead would not be easy. His fortune might fade, his reputation might never recover, but he had chosen truth over lies, life over fear. And in that choice, he had found something more precious than all the gold in the world.